Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to What Women Want with Judy Goss, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. I'm Judy Goss, and welcome to What Women Want Talk Radio. We've been on the air for over 2 years and have hit way over 500,000 downloads during this time on LA Talk Radio's website archives, iTunes, and Google Play. So the word has really gotten out there about our show, and I want to thank you, my listeners, because I realize I wouldn't have a show without you. And let me tell you, we've recently had on celebrities like Marcia Clark, the prosecutor from the O.J. Simpson trial, five-time Olympian Jackie Edwards, Stacey Rose from the HBO's hit show Ballers, starring The Rock. And we are rocketing skywards with our guests and our co-host. I'm super excited tonight that I have actress and producer Kristin West co-hosting with me. Kristin, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Judy. I'm always excited to spend Wednesday evenings with you, and I'm really excited that we're going to have a great conversation tonight. So thank you for having me on.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. Yeah, Amy Newmark is coming on in just a few minutes. She's the publisher and editor-in-chief of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And, you know, when I do my research for the show, I always try to come up with, questions. We look into the people's backgrounds and all that. And I think I ran out of paper because, she has the most fascinating job ever, right? I mean, it's just so many questions, so many things I want to know about her.
Absolutely. Amy has really been part of a very vibrant part of American literary history, I think, because this is such a successful anthology series. Amy has really put her stamp on the literary world. And beyond that, Amy has contributed to the well-being of so many people around the world with the inspiring stories she's putting out there, and I'm just so excited to get the opportunity to speak with her.
Well, you're another inspirational one. I want to read your intro here. You're an award-winning actress and producer. You are the winner of a Best Actress award for the film Seeking Valentina. You were nominated for Best Actress and the Mary Austin Award for Female Producers, and won the Indie Spirit Award a couple of weeks ago at the Idlewild International Film Festival. Wow, congratulations. You graduated from the University of Texas with a degree in radio, TV, and film. And I have to say, you're beautiful from the inside out, and always so engaging with our guests and myself. And I'm just honored to have you back with us here tonight.
Well, Judy, thank you. I'm blushing now.
Oh, good thing it's not TV.
It's true. But thank you so much. And I'm so happy to get to share this space with you.
It's our pleasure. My pleasure. Before we bring on the star of the show, for those of you who are longtime listeners and hear this every single show, here's my background in a nutshell. In addition to radio, I'm a TV host, a journalist, entrepreneur, and published author of St. Martin's Press. My background comes from the fashion and publishing worlds, from international high fashion model with Ford New York to magazine editor for both Cosmopolitan and More magazines. And after that, a TV correspondent for Better TV. I hosted my own show on there about female entrepreneurs. And I am a regular contributor on NBC Connecticut and Fox New York. I'm proud to say I'm the new dining diva, I call myself, on Fox's new lifestyle show, Ernie and Astas in New York. Ernie, for those of you who don't know, is a 35-year veteran in the news industry in New York City. He's one of the most famous anchors ever. So I'm so honored to be on his new show, talking about the hottest places to eat and drink in New York City. I'm basically eating my way around the entire place. It's airing February 11th at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox New York. And like I said before, I'm also a St. Martin's Press published author. The book Break Into Modeling for Under $20. I'm a writer for New York Lifestyles magazine and the founder of a nationwide inspirational networking company called What Women Want. We're formerly Over 40 Females, just changed the name a couple of weeks ago to go with the show, with 20 chapters nationwide. Yes, we changed our name. whatwomenwantnetworking.com. By the way, we're looking for chapter directors up and down the California coast and across the country. So just email us through the website, whatwomenwantnetworking.com. We've opened 3 chapters in January alone in Texas, Tennessee, and Georgia. And to top it all off, I am the proud mom of 12-year-old twin girls, 12 and a half, and happily married to a hot husband. Okay, so enough about me. Let's get to Kristin. Kristin, I was in your home state a couple of weeks ago in Texas. What part are you from?
I am from a small town called Poteet, which is the strawberry capital of Texas, which is about 20 miles south of San Antonio.
That sounds like such an idyllic upbringing.
Poteet is a very, very charming town, and my family has actually been there for about 100 years.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's fascinating. So from Texas to Hollywood, that's amazing. How, I find it fascinating, Amy Newmark's stories and everything that she does. But for someone to come from a teeny little town like that and end up in Hollywood, it's really, truly amazing. And you're in the middle of pilot season, right?
We are. Right now, pilot season, for those of you who don't know, it's the time when they're shooting what are called pilot episodes of new television shows. So basically like test runs of TV concepts. And so it's a very big time in Hollywood for actors to get roles for all of the new shows we're going to get to see in the upcoming seasons.
Oh, that is exciting. And your film, Seeking Valentina, how's that going? I'm so proud of you for everything you're doing, all the awards you've gotten and just everything you're accomplishing.
Well, we had a great time in Idlewild. Like you mentioned, we won the Indie Spirit Award, and we keep scheduling screenings. We're going to have one in Las Vegas in the summer at the Hollywood Dreams Festival, and I don't quite know the date yet. And I also have 2 films in post-production that I've acted in. One is called Sound, which is directed by Tawan Basemore, and also The Spirit Room by Adam Ung. So we're going to see other films hopefully getting to some more festivals soon.
Oh my gosh, that is so awesome. You're involved in so many things. So multi-talented, radio show host, actress, producer. It just seems like there's nothing you can't do.
Well, I have I say this often, I stand on the shoulders of giants like you.
And, oh, please.
Oh, but, I'm really privileged to work with some amazing people who support me and my ideals and the work that I want to create. And I'm just inspired by so many different people. And I'm just so glad also to have my first foray into radio with you, which is just beyond exciting.
Well, you certainly can't tell it's your first foray. And talk about exciting and inspirational. Let's bring on our guest, Amy Newmark.
Yes.
Hey, happy to be here.
Hi, Amy. Well, I want to tell people a little bit about you before we dive into the fascinating world of Amy from her own lips. I want to tell people what an amazing example of girl power, woman power you are. After 3 decades in the world of Wall Street and various technology companies, Amy switched careers at age 50, buying Chicken Soup for the Soul with her husband and an investment group in 2008, becoming publisher and editor-in-chief. She is widely credited with keeping the famous anthology self-help series relevant and topical in this new millennium, and she has created and or written the last 136 Chicken Soup for the Soul books. Amy, welcome back to the show.
Well, thanks. And I'm sitting here blown away by what you guys have done. So I don't know. I feel like the 3 of us are sounding pretty intimidating to everyone out there, and yet we don't feel that way about ourselves.
Oh, did you write a book about that one?
No.
Maybe you should. You've covered everything else. Actually, you do talk about insecurity. I can't remember if it's in your new book, Simply Happy, or on a podcast, but I do remember me reading somewhere that I think it's in your book, Simply Happy, that we're hard on ourselves. We are so tough. Why are we so tough on ourselves, Amy?
It's most common among successful women, and it's something called imposter syndrome.
That's it. It's in your book, Simply Happy.
Right. And you're doing something really well, and then you think, when are they all going to figure out that I've just been pretending? And you just have this massive insecurity crisis. And in fact, you are doing whatever you're doing really well, but I don't think men have this crisis of confidence that women have. But anyway, it has a name. It's called imposter syndrome, and it can happen during anything. In my book, I talked about how it happened to me one time. I've never forgotten it because it struck me so hard. I was taking my little kids, they were just toddlers, home from a barbecue at a neighbor's house, and they were looking up at me so trustingly. And I remember I was getting them in the car and thinking I've got to get them home, and my husband was leaving on a business trip, so I was alone with them. And they looked up at me, and I thought, don't they know I just got out of college and I have no idea what I'm doing? I don't know how to handle two little kids. And that whole night, I just pretended to be their competent mother, and I have never forgotten it, even though it happened, 25 years ago. That feeling is still with me, and I think it happens to all of us. We just all of a sudden can't believe that we're actually doing whatever we're doing because we kind of started out pretending, right?
Fake it till you make it. Well, you went through a devastating, time recently, and I can imagine that you put a lot of the principles into this book, Simply Happy, to that. I'm sorry to say that you lost your mother recently. And
I did. I lost her on January 3rd, and I was supposed to come on your show January 4th, and I was sending emails about it like 2 hours before she passed on January 3rd. I was just looking, and I thought, oh my gosh, I was emailing at 3:30 in the afternoon. I was sending Judy an email, and like an hour later, my mother was gone. That was, I had no idea. Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of the principles in your book you must have applied to that situation. But really now, what an ironic, twist here. And I feel like the book Simply Happy is a little bit different from your other ones because it's more about simple tips to be happy than it is about, based on stories. Is that true?
Yeah, I refer to about 60 of my favorite stories in Simply Happy, but really it's a book totally written by me from scratch.
They're so well blended in.
Yeah, everything that I've learned. But I have to tell you, when my mother was hospitalized December 28th, and ironically, that was the day that I was scheduled to start editing our Mother's Day book that comes out late March.
Oh my gosh.
So I edited our Mother's Day book during the week she was in the hospital, and then during the week that we were, shocked and getting ready for her funeral. And I'm a professional. I did what you guys would have done. I got the book finished. It was really hard, but I did it. And the whole time my husband kept saying to me, use what you wrote about in your book. All that stuff that you learned, that you shared with everybody in Simply Happy, just keep doing that. And constantly he's saying to me, remember what you said in your book. And then I say, you're right. I will do what I told everybody else to do. So I am trying to follow my own advice. And it's actually really good to have written down my own advice for other people. And now I get to force myself in a time of stress to follow that advice.
Oh my gosh. Well, teaching is such a big part of what you do. And I'm sure you realize that. I can't imagine, though, and this is going to sound kind of weird, but being responsible, and you mentioned it at one point in one of your blogs, for so many people wanting and needing inspiration from you, basically, your chicken soup for the soul. And they're looking for that. And I don't know how you pick what stories go in the book. I could never do anything like that. But do you ever feel the pressure of trying to maintain that responsibility?
Oh, yeah. When we bought the company from Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen 9 years ago, I so felt the weight of their legacy and the responsibility and the tens of millions of fans out there who'd had no idea who I was, but there I was taking this amazing format, the history of this company, and having to keep it going for all of these devoted fans. And I think about it all the time, and my entire editorial team thinks about it. Every story that we pick for every book, we pick believing that it will have a positive influence on tens of thousands of people. And there are 101 stories in each book, but we want each one of those stories to be able to resonate with tens of thousands of people. And we get 5,000 or more submissions for most of our books, and we read every single submission, and then we have to narrow it down to 101. And boy, you feel like a college admissions counselor. You know you're leaving so many great kids out, and I feel terrible about that, but I only have as much room as I have.
Yeah. Kristin, you resonated with one of her books that is being, let's see, is it being released or it has been just released?
I was really interested in Curvy and Confident. Is that slated to come out in February, or is it already out?
That one came out December 27th.
Oh.
So that book is all about loving yourself and your body and having positive body image and stopping all of that negative messaging. And my co-authors for that book are supermodel Emmy.
Oh, Emmy.
Emmy. And then former People magazine reporter Natasha Stoynoff. And that book is like our antidote to all of the messaging you get in January, all that messaging on TV about weight loss and starving yourself and trying to look like Judy looks naturally. Because not everybody is a former model. But the fact is that, what's crazy to me is that the majority of women in America are size 12 and up, and yet that's called plus size modeling, and I don't understand why that's not called regular size modeling.
There's definitely a lot of problems with the way we perceive body image and how it doesn't cohere with what many women actually are. And, from my perspective as a person who's proudly plus sized, you would think that retailers would really embrace that market more. But I'm so glad to see that you're embracing it from a literary perspective. I was curious, obviously, Emmy has an amazing story and has been a figure in this community, in the plus size modeling community for years. And you brought Natasha on board. What did they add to this book? Because you three collaborated together on this Curvy and Confident book, correct?
Yeah. So here's what they did for me. First of all, they brought me the idea.
Wonderful.
And they educated me. And Natasha is a tall, healthy, athletic girl also. So she wears the plus sizes also, if you want to call them plus sizes, as does Emmy. And they're both jocks. They're both so athletic. But Natasha used to cover Emmy at People magazine when she first, became famous. And Natasha covered a lot of the other plus size models. So she was very familiar with the business. And then, of course, Emmy is the first plus size supermodel who attained fame, and she paved the way for so many after her. Here's what they got me thinking about. And I think that I actually think about this all the time. I thought about it just this morning when I was exercising. They talk about reintegrating yourself with your body, because I think so many of us think, well, I'm up here in my brain and in my head, and then from the neck down, there's this body that I'm attached to. And right now, I might not be so happy with this body. And sometimes I like it, and sometimes I don't like it. But it's like an us versus it. It's like a me versus it thing. Like me is my head, and then below the neck is this thing, this body. And the idea is to reintegrate with your body. And, your little toe at the end of your foot is just as much you as your brain is you. And so they taught me a lot. And what we really talked about in this book is nurture your body, meaning nourish it, give it food. Love your body, respect your body for what it does for you. It's strong, it's healthy. So what if your thighs are bigger than you would like? Those thighs are getting you, you're walking around with those. And then finally, let's see, love your body. Wait, love your body, nourish. Oh, and use your body. That's the reintegration. By using your body, by moving your body, you are reconnecting your brain to the rest of your body. And it doesn't matter if you like walking at the mall, or if you like kickboxing, or if you like yoga, or if you like hiking up a mountain. Anything that moves your body and reintegrates your brain with your body is great for you. So that theme pervades our book.
I think that's a really compelling theme because there's so many things that try to separate us from our bodies. We try and fit into diets that don't, like you said, nourish us. We try to contort into various clothes that don't fit us well just to suit a fashion. So I think that's really compelling. And I think the timing of the messaging is really important because right now everybody's bombarded by weight loss ads, gym ads, all sorts of messaging that doesn't really bring you home to your body. And I really, want to commend you for working on that. And it's, the plus size modeling movement, sometimes it ebbs and flows. Of course, Emmy's been in there for the long haul. One of the things that you're really credited for with Chicken Soup for the Soul is really getting into the zeitgeist of our time and bringing chicken soup of the soul into the new millennium and really giving it a new spin and perspective. How did you attack that when you first took over the project? What did you focus on?
Well, I'm very open-minded and intellectually curious, and I think that comes from, being on Wall Street, being an analyst, always trying to learn new facts, develop new perspectives, like being open-minded about changing my perspective. When you're switching from a buy to a sell recommendation on a stock, you've got to be an open-minded person. You have to be willing to change positions quickly based on circumstances. And I think that applies to how I run our publishing business also. And what I do is I read national magazines. I try to stay up on changing technology. I try to stay up on what's popular on television and in the movies. I read bestsellers all the time. If I don't have time to read, I listen to them on audiobooks in the car, but I try to expose myself to what people are reading and what they're finding interesting. And I try to at least sample a bunch of self-help books to see what it is that people are looking for. And then I just pay attention. When it came to the Curvy and Confident book, I noticed how many ads now are starting to have larger women in them. And you'll see like 3 skinny women and 2 regular women in an ad, that kind of thing. I noticed that healthy approach that was starting to spread. But I also try to make the books that I want to read. There's a Toni Morrison quote that I'm now going to get completely wrong, but it's something about if there's a book you want to read and nobody has written it, then you must write it yourself. And that's what I try to do. I needed to read my Simply Happy book. I needed to organize my thoughts, so I wrote my Simply Happy book with all those simple tips for being happy. I needed to read the Curvy and Confident book, and so I created it, and I am living so many of the tips in the Curvy and Confident book. I keep referring to the tips in that book every day as I go through my life.
I'm referring to the tips in your Simply Happy book because it's such a, I don't want to say basic, but some of the things that you talk about, smiling just to, other people in public. I myself was living in a place where I didn't think, I was going to be very happy in at one point. And I read something about, just try smiling to somebody and see if you get a smile back. And it actually made it a happier place. And I didn't realize that everyone walking around me would actually smile if I did. And you have such simple basics to really becoming happy that I feel like we just need a little nudge every once in a while for someone to tell us these things.
You know what? They're so obvious, right? But sometimes you just have to hear the obvious, and this whole concept of a smile being a boomerang. I mean, if somebody just has some preconceived notion of Chicken Soup for the Soul as being some unsophisticated thing, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, she's just telling people to smile. But really, that's one of 24 tips, and a lot of them are way more sophisticated than that. But the reason I made this the first tip in the book is because you can implement it immediately, and it always works. And so I didn't want to skip over something that seems so obvious, but really, really works. And I do it all the time. Oh, I have a great example. A few weeks ago, I was in New York City on 6th Avenue. I needed to make a right turn onto West 44th Street. Somebody had a little fender bender right at the intersection, and the cops had, put down cones and blocked the entire turn. And I was going to a hotel halfway down the block on West 46th Street, and I had luggage in the car. And we saw 20 cars ahead of us be told, nope, you're not allowed to turn. You got to keep going up 6th Avenue. And so I said to the driver, just pull over and let me talk to the cop. So we pulled over, and I gave the guy a big, big smile. And I have to tell you, I was not charming him. I'm in my 50s. Like, this was really just a smile, nothing else. But I gave him a big smile, and I said, hey, I have luggage in the trunk, and I am capable of wheeling it down the block, but it really looks like we could go in that third lane. Is there any chance you could let us go? And I had this huge smile on my face the whole time. And he goes, you have such a beautiful smile. I'm going to let you make the turn. And then he stopped traffic on 6th Avenue, made people back up so that we could back up and then make the right turn onto 46th Street. And off we went. And then I looked, and he put the cones back behind us. And when I got out half a block down at my hotel and looked back, no one else followed us. So I used that smile in big, bad New York City, and it worked great.
Okay, first of all, I want to follow you around in traffic the next time I'm in Manhattan. Because that is truly magical. That's an amazing way to be. You talk about so much on your podcast and in your writings and everywhere about this whole grateful thing. And, that was such a difficult concept for me to get. I felt grateful, about with my life and me and everything that's happened to me. But I didn't really truly know the deep meaning of it until I started studying it and practicing it consciously. Can you just explain the difference to people listening out there, what being grateful and being grateful is?
So it's really interesting. I actually did a book called The Power of Gratitude with Deborah Norville, and she had done a lot of work reading all the scientific research on gratitude and, these studies that proved that if you can become a grateful person, you really will be happier, you will be healthier, you will have better relationships with people, you'll be more successful in life. And if you think about it, it does make sense that without gratitude, how could you possibly be happy? Because if you cannot see the blessings in your life, how will you go through your day feeling good about yourself and what you have? Here's what I love about gratitude. It's one of those traits that comes naturally to some people. Like, I think it comes to me naturally, so that's terrific. That makes my life easier. Always seeing the silver linings, always seeing the blessings in my life, no matter what bad things are happening. But it turns out about 50% of people do not have that trait naturally inside them. But it's one of the traits that you can actually learn, and it will really stick once you learn it, and you can learn it really quickly and easily. In about 1 month, you can actually make gratitude a natural part of your outlook. And I think I've read probably 1,000 stories from people who were not grateful and then figured out they were not grateful. And some of them had awful things happening in their lives, and yet they figured out how to change their outlook. So here's the simple way they do it. They make a gratitude list, or they keep a gratitude journal, or they have a blessings box and they write down something they're happy about and they throw it in the box and then they read it at the end of the month. But if you write down 3 things a day that are good, and it could be something simple like I picked the right line at the grocery store, or it could be something really major like I'm really lucky I have my husband. But if you write down 3 a day, and they have to be different 3 each day, and you just do it for a month, you're going to have almost 100 of them by the end of the month. And people have reported that when they do that for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, all of a sudden it's coming naturally, and they spend their whole day looking for something good to write on their list, and it makes them open their eyes to all the good things, and then all of a sudden they find that they're thanking people for good things, and they become different people just as a result of opening their eyes to all of the good things in their lives.
Kristin, couldn't you just sit here and listen to her all night?
Oh my goodness! I just want to reach. I want to reach through the ethers and hug you.
Oh my gosh, you guys are so nice. You're so nice, and you're just giving me a soapbox to talk about all my favorite subjects. So I really appreciate it. I'm
going to put my feet up on the table. Just keep going.
I think your voice is so important in the world that we live in, because there's there's different there's a lot of debate and dissent and people negotiating the hardships of life, and this point you bring up about gratitude, there's a saying, an attitude of gratitude brings grace. And I think if we could all learn to live more gracefully using the tips that you're giving us through these wonderful books, I think that's deeply healing for the world that we live in. What do you think is the hardest part when you're narrowing down your focus for the books? What is the hardest? What is the hardest part of curating these stories? Obviously, you have a high volume of submissions, but what is it that you have what causes that eureka moment that you have found a story that you have to publish and share with a mass of people? Is it something in your heart? Is it something in your head? Is it a combination of both?
We publish stories that make us feel something. Sometimes they make us laugh out loud. Sometimes they make us get all teary-eyed. Sometimes they make us say, oh, wow, I have to try that. Sometimes they make us want to call each other and say, did you read that story about such and such? But they're all stories that make us feel something, where we just say, oh, wow, this has to be shared. This is going to change lives, or this is going to make people laugh out loud. I mean, sometimes we put together books that are basically just plain fun, like our books about dogs and cats. Yeah, there's some inspiration in them, but really they're just, they are inspirational, and we do have an ulterior motive because we're trying to promote adoption from shelters, but still they're just entertaining books that do have this underlying message like, hey, go to a shelter the next time you want to get a pet. That message is there, but it's inside some very entertaining stories. But sometimes, though, I have to say, like, we're nice and we love the people who write for us, and sometimes we just feel so bad that we can't take more than 101 for each book. So there's that also. There's that feeling of concern. Oh, gosh, I know this person worked so hard on this story, and it's really a great story, but we have 5 others on the exact same topic, and we have to pick among them. That's why I tell people, please submit early. You'll have a better shot of getting in if you submit your stories early before we've read 5 on the same topic.
There was a question I had about your background that I found fascinating. I saw that you actually, in your earlier career, had gone to Brazil and collected poems and short stories. Do you think that part of your life, that earlier part of your life, has prepared you for what you've taken on now?
No, but what a coincidence. And I hadn't even thought about it. So what happened was, when I was in college, I was basically determined to go through all of college without ever taking a math or science course. And I had to take one. But I really, my senior year of high school, I took French, German, Latin, and English. That was my senior year of high school. I was good at math, but I just didn't care to keep studying math. So when I was in college, I majored in Portuguese, and I went to Brazil for a semester and did research for my thesis there, because we did a thesis as an undergraduate where I went, and I did a thesis on this form of popular literature in northeastern Brazil. And I did travel all around northeastern Brazil, which was a very poor area. I was basically in the favelas, which are the slums. There's nothing like the courage of a stupid 20-year-old, I had a gold ring on every finger, and I'm walking around the slums of Brazil, and nothing bad ever happened to me. But anyway, I didn't even think of. Then I went to Wall Street. Like the whole Portuguese thing was great.
I was going to say, hold on, wait. You went from poems in Brazil to technology on Wall Street.
Well, what happened was the summer I got back from Brazil, and then I had no money. I had something like $11 in my checking account, and I needed a job. And my father was an investment banker in telecommunications, and he sent me, I guess, something about I know. It was a company that was doing a newsletter about telecommunications in Brazil, and they needed somebody who spoke Portuguese. And so I went and applied for this job because here's the weird thing. While I was in Brazil, being this language person, this literary person who had said I wasn't getting involved in in like science or math in college, while I was in Brazil, I found myself absolutely fascinated with the telecommunications system there. So despite myself, I was very interested in computers and technology. And I went to work for this company using my fluency in Portuguese and my writing skills to study the telecommunications market in Brazil. So from there, I went into consulting. When I graduated from college, I went to Wall Street to be an analyst covering the telecommunications industry, and I was in the telecommunications industry for decades after that. And then we got into Chicken Soup for the Soul, and I had not had a resume in decades, and I had to sit down and write a resume. I'm writing my resume, and I wrote down what I did in college, and I said, oh my gosh, wait a minute. I didn't even think about the fact that 30 years ago I was collecting stories and poems from the people in Brazil, and now I'm doing the same thing here. But it honestly had not even occurred to me until I was forced to write my resume.
Well, that's what I find so fascinating about the story is because, I actually had no idea that you started all this in Brazil. You've really come full circle. It's crazy with what your instinct was probably telling you way back then. I just want to read a quote from you from your Huffington Post column that you said, storytelling, after all, is the most common way that we pass on wisdom, advice, and culture from one generation to the next. It's how mankind has woven continuous threads through society for thousands of years, and stories make people happy.
Well, if you think about it, let's say something bad happens. Somebody is diagnosed with a disease. They turn to other people with the same disease to get advice. Let's say something good happens. Your child is getting married. You turn to your friends whose children got married recently and you talk to them about it. But whatever happens to you, good or bad, you want to hear other people's personal stories because you just instinctively know that's how you learn best versus reading dry essays. So I think that what we're doing is just what the human spirit hungers for anyway. We're sharing wisdom and advice and all these great tips through storytelling because that is the way we like to ingest our information, and it's the way we actually retain it better. We learn more from storytelling than we learn from just reading, dry magazine articles.
Yeah, I didn't feel like my business really took off until I started telling my story, mostly because I was hiding it. And I think people didn't really see the authentic me until I started telling, about my bankruptcy and everything that I was going through during the recession, being laid off. And I was ashamed of it. And, when I started talking about it, I own a networking group and I have chapters all around the country. So I often travel to them, and I would have women, at the end, I would stand up and tell my story, how the company started and what I went through. And, at one point it just got so bad. My house was on the foreclosure market, on the auction block, basically. And, my husband and I went through all this with twin babies that we really didn't know how we were going to feed. And it was just a very dramatic thing that I went through. And the women afterwards would come up to me and go, "Oh, I'm so glad you told me that," And I was just really shocked. And that's when I really realized that our stories are the most important, thing that we have, the basis, the foundation for who we are. And it's just fascinating to me that you can put them in down in black and white and have people still really enjoy them. I mean, I really enjoy reading your books and learning from them, and you bring them to life. So I applaud you for that. I think that's wonderful, and that you are really changing the world.
Well, you guys should each write a story for one of our upcoming books, because I think besides the fact that you have something really good to share with people, it also feels so good to write a story and know that you're unselfishly sharing it so that the experience becomes even more worth having had, right? If you can help other people with your experience, that is one of your silver linings.
Oh, speaking about helping others, Random Acts of Kindness coming out in February. I think that's the book Kristin had mentioned, coming out in February, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So it's coming out Tuesday. It's coming out February 7th. And boy, do we need this, right?
Now how far in advance do you schedule these books? Was that just a coincidence that it's coming out at this point, or what?
No, I decided. I guess I must have put it on the schedule about a year ago, and this is what happens. I put these books on the schedule, and then they end up being like perfectly timed, and it's just one of those things. I remember seeing Michael Crichton speak at one point. He's gone now, but he was such an impressive speaker, and he was talking about how he came up with his topics. And he said, I just pay attention to what's going on, and if I find a topic that I think is interesting, I write a book about it. And then he said, it's remarkable how often, just as a book is coming out, whatever the topic is seems to be like top of mind. And so here's the funny thing. I didn't even realize when I put the Random Acts of Kindness book on the schedule for February 7th, I didn't even realize that February 17th is National Random Acts of Kindness Day. So that was just luck. But I do think that people are really reaching out now, and we had really big orders for this book, a lot more than I would have expected. And we're very excited about it. And the stories are so inspiring. So many people talking about compassion and paying it forward and taking care of people in their communities who need help. Just doing all these great ideas where I look at them and say, oh, I got to do that. Of course, that's what I was saying. I like stories where I want to do something. And yeah, I've already got a story in here where I'm saying, I'm going to do what this woman did in her story. So yeah, Random Acts of Kindness on Tuesday. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a Twitter launch party on Wednesday. We have all kinds of great plans for this book.
Well, you got to tag us and let us know about it so we can support you putting this out there, because that is truly a book that we all need right now. And it's just, like you said, you know what? It's the magic of Chicken Soup for the Soul. I think it's just, when you go with your gut and you know yourself so well and you're grateful and you follow all the things that you've learned. I mean, you're just a pure example of that happening, really.
So I have another book that I just put on our schedule. I just came up with this idea 2 days ago. Every year I go, oh gosh, I can't think of any new topics. It's over. I'll never think of another new topic. And then all of a sudden, all these ideas come pouring out. And so I'm really excited now. I just put a book on the schedule for this fall. So this is going to be a quick one, right? Because it's February and we just posted this one for submissions. But it's called Step Outside Your Comfort Zone. And I think it's going to be really, really fun and inspirational, because we all have a tendency to get in a rut, right? And we start to say no to new things, and then our lives get narrower. And I work so hard to keep making myself do new things, even if I'm afraid of them. It just makes you feel so much better and makes you feel more a participant in the world. So I'm going to make this book, and I'm really excited to be making this book. And you might, Judy, you might want to talk about stepping outside your comfort zone by telling your story, and how that works.
That's honored.
Great for that book.
It was
write that story. You'll be one of the 101.
Oh, I would love to. I would be so honored and thrilled to do that. And it really, truly was. I mean, I had life coaches, telling me why aren't you telling people your story? And I was like, no, I'm building a business. I don't want people to know that I went through that, because how are they going to think that I can, run a business when I had gone through all that? And, I was ashamed of it when, millions of other people went through it around the same time also. It wasn't just me. But you're right. There's just a sense of relief and the sense of that I can touch someone with my story and have them actually, thrilled that I told it and realize that we all go through this sort of thing. We all go through, all of this in our lives. And the only way to learn from each other is to tell our stories.
And Kristin, I think that if you talked about being an actress and then becoming a producer, and I mean, that's like a big step outside your comfort zone, isn't it?
When I was 22 years old, I got into my car, the only car I've ever had, and I drove 1,000 miles to Los Angeles on I-10 West, and on blind faith. And my whole life has been really expanded by really stepping out of my comfort zone. And I'm so glad that you're bringing that thought into the world, because, and I don't know who said this, but it is a quote, life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage. I think it might have been a nice nin, actually. And we all need to take those steps like you have to be more courageous, like Judy has, to be courageous in spite of what we may feel comfortable with, and we all just have to rock on with it.
yeah, Kristin, that's funny, because my story was in the modeling world. I moved to Italy. I didn't know the language. I knew no one there. I knew, I just got on a plane and went to Italy because my agency said I had to. So it was the same thing. And taking those steps just really does open you up to more and more things. And I'm so proud of you, for what you've been doing and accomplishing too. And I feel bad because we're running out of time, and I would just love to talk to you ladies for another couple of days about, what we're talking about, because I know I'm learning so much, and I know that our listeners are also. Amy, I don't know how to thank you, for coming on the show and just being so candid about, what you do and who you are, and really just, changing our lives, Kristin and I, and everyone else's. You're touching the world, and we're just so grateful to have you on the show.
Well, I'm grateful to be on, and I'm really looking forward to reading your stories. I'm so excited. You see, I can't stop being that publisher. I'm out there acquiring stories. Now I'm going to have both of you writing about stepping outside your comfort zones for that book of ours that's going to come out in the fall. So
woohoo, love
fabulous.
It. That's so exciting. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much again. And Kristin, thank you for, being such a wonderful co-host every time. I enjoy being on the air with you so much.
I enjoy being part of the journey with you, Judy, and I'll go where you lead us. So let's go to some fabulous places and topics, because I'm ready.
Listen to this. Talk about stepping out of your comfort zone. Okay, this woman, actually, she didn't step out of her comfort zone. She got thrown into this situation. Jennifer Wilkov, founder of the Speak Up Conference at the United Nations. She has it every year. This is her second year. She spent time in federal prison, Rikers, no less, for a financial crime that she was not guilty of. Her story is just fascinating. I can't wait to have her back on the show. It's all here on LA Talk Radio, or you can go to whatwomenwantradio.com. And thank you again, everyone, so much for listening, and have a good night.
You're listening to What Women Want with Judy Goss, only on LA Talk Radio.